We're talking about cookware. A little peek behind the scenes. Hope you're doing well. Bring it in on Friday with Jarod. There's David Thorpe. How are you, sir?
I'm good.
All right, Jarod. We got a lot to talk about. I have a feeling it's going to be kind of intense today.
To talk about. So apparently, black people are on strike. Surprise, surprise. There's a lot happening in the world. I mean, I even hate saying that. A lot of things going on in the world, but you guys know what I mean. So Malika Andrews, who has been really killing it down at the bubble for ESPN, roughly 100 NBA employees based in New York are on strike today in solidarity with the NBA and WNBA players pushing for social justice. They will be spending the day calling elected officials. That is a monumental moment. I know a lot of you yesterday saw the NBA referees marching around the Orlando campus in support of the players as well. Nike has employees who are not at work today also on strike, and they all have out-of-office replies that say, "We're not at work," in support of, and they list countless names of black people killed at the hands of police. I'm so exasperated and exhausted, and Adam Silver is talking about how he's in support of the employees, and we support you. Let us know what more can we do. The thing is, folks, it's not just about people at Nike, the NBA, like we. And I said this on the emergency pod the other day. What kind of world do we want to live in? Like, do we want to live in a better place? If we, in fact, want to do that, you've all got to feel like this is important. This isn't a politics issue. This is a person and a people and a morality issue. Like, do you want to see your fellow citizens get killed? No, you shouldn't. Why would you want that? Anyway, I'm done.
Oh, I have a feeling you're not done.
Metaphorically speaking, maybe. So just to put a personal face to what we're dealing with, and it's not just about murder and killing, it's the little things. A friend of mine named Mark Grissick, who I've known since I was 9, 1974. He was 10, I was 9. We played Little League basketball together and literally grew up together all the way through his senior year of high school. When I was a junior, we guarded each other every day. And Mark played college basketball, and he is paler than me as a white man. Married a lovely black woman 30-something years ago. They are the most adorable couple still that I know of. And his son, Trey, who's now in his mid-20s, former college player, was pulled over the other day, and Mark sent this tweet out, my lifelong friend, saying, "My son calls me at 6:30 a.m. crying. I just got pulled over," he said. "How messed up is it that the first question I have to ask my son is, 'Are you hurt?' No ticket, wouldn't explain why I pulled him over, just kept asking, 'Is this car yours? Did you steal it? What the hell?' It's the third time being pulled over for driving while black. I'm done." Mark, my buddy's in pain. His son is a terrific young man and a coach, just like his dad. His dad's one of the best coaches in Florida. And this is what we're dealing with in real time. It isn't just on TV somewhere. It's happening all over the place still.
Thank you, David. I'm going to read from, Catherine Belton's been on the show. This is her book, Putin's People. I feel like it's like a reading from the Bible because it kind of is the Bible now. Okay. So this guy, the shooter in Kenosha, the alleged shooter, is being represented by a lawyer. The idea is, who's paying for these lawyers, right? What connections do they have? And I'm just going to read to you from her book about Rudy Giuliani. This same lawyer has represented Rudy Giuliani in the past. It became clear that parts of the same network of Moscow money men were continuing to operate. As the 2020 U.S. presidential election approached, some of them appeared to be attempting to steer things Trump's way. Sapir's business partner and Chigurinsky associate Sam Kislin had forged close relations with Rudy Giuliani, the former New York mayor, who by that time was acting as Trump's personal attorney. Kislin liked to boast of his friendly relations with Trump, and he'd funneled substantial donations to Giuliani's mayoral campaign in the 90s. By 2019, he was urging Giuliani to investigate allegations of corruption in Ukraine and was calling for Trump's administration to investigate former Ukrainian president. Two Soviet-born businessmen, Igor Fruman and Lev Parnas, arrested on charges of conspiring to circumvent laws against foreign influence, also befriended Giuliani, and on and on. My point is, when we're talking about how to solve America's problems, we have to be aware there's an undeclared war on America by people who are intentionally inflaming racial divides and potentially funding this guy's lawyer. Thank you.
Yeah. So shout out to Chris Haynes, who's one of the more plugged in dudes. Yahoo Sports Chris Haynes turned TNT. inside the emotional 48 hours to save the NBA's bubble. So I was thinking about like seeds of change and like tilling over ground, etc. I don't know much about that because I'm not a horticulturist or anybody with a green thumb. But I will say this: America as a piece of soil is infested with disease and just things that do not promote growth. And in order to get that out, right, it's this idea of pulling out all of that disease and rot, re-getting soil that is fertile to allow growth and moving that over. Folks, that is a painstaking process, as we are currently seeing. And we read in Chris's article, and I encourage you guys all to read it. It talked about how there's a lot of back and forth among the players because it's just hard to get consensus and agree. But, you know, the one thing they can all agree on is they want things to change, and they want it to change at a faster rate than it is. One thing that did not help that change is something that occurred in that meeting by Patrick Beverley, who, while Michelle Roberts was talking, interrupted her and was like, I don't agree with your logic. And when she politely asked him, well, Pat, can I continue to talk about this? He yelled, no, I pay your salary, right? And there's just no place for that. Michelle Roberts is someone who is at the head of your union fighting on your behalf. That is not the way to handle these kinds of insights. I texted her last night to see how she was doing. Look, if we're going to make this happen, and I know I'm going over, we've got to connect and make sure that we agree. And if we have disagreements, we talk about it in a calm fashion, but we, man, get to the point where what is the end goal we're trying to accomplish here? And what Pat did, that's not the way to do it.
Don't start me yet, Judy. I want to just say quickly, Henry and I talk often about Pat Bev.
Oh, David's going for the uncounted time.
Oh, yeah.
Judy, your legal might have to weigh in on that one.
Okay, I can save it. I can save it for later. I don't want to piss Henry
No,
off.
it's okay. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Pat Bev has a ton of street cred. We've talked about it. But Udonis Haslem is the OG. So when Pat Bev did what he did, and Udonis said, we're not having that here, young man, that was it. Like once when the OG talks, move on. It is done. All right. I'm going to read from a Philadelphia Inquirer review of Michael Lewis's book, The Fifth Risk. The article says, President Trump, of course, is entitled to appoint people who will implement his policy. This is from the book. That said, Lewis notes many of the challenges that federal agencies face. Quote, how to stop a virus. I'll read that again. How to stop a virus, how to take a census, how to determine if a certain foreign country is seeking to obtain a nuclear weapon are more technical than ideological. As the Fifth Risk documents, expertise and experience matter a lot. And alas, many deeply knowledgeable people have left government service and are now forbidden by federal law from making contact with their replacements. Most important, perhaps, this book makes it more difficult to deny that government can be and has been the solution, not the problem. As we face the virus, as we face racism, as we face the infested soil that Jarod rightly just talked about, this is why we need government. And this is why we have to get every 18-year-old we know who is rational, reasonable, and has empathy to vote to make change, because we have to have our government if we expect to have a country to even be mildly proud of going forward. We have to vote, everyone. It's on government to do this.
Just look at that. Legal right on it. Okay. Here's the thing. Again and again, through my adult life, there's been the players want something that they're rightfully entitled to, and the way they can get it is by withholding services through some kind of labor action. And when that happens, every time, day one, the analysis is half the league needs a check next week, right? And the players can't wait as long as the owners can. Like, we know this is coming. Like, lots of unions have like a strike fund where everybody gets on some kind of, fixed income for the duration of the strike, so that the players can hang on longer, right? Does the NBPA have that? I've never heard of it. If they don't have some kind of preparation for it now, when we've known for a while that like the CBA wasn't going to make it very long, right? It's something terrible has happened, so this doesn't exist. They did set up escrows to protect the owners from shortfalls, right? They did set up. They did take money from everyone's paychecks to get health insurance for retired players. Like, we know that you can get a vote out of this group to get collective funding for things that have to be funded. Like they're missing.
Well done. So happy anniversary, everyone. Today is the anniversary of a monumental moment. I'll let Judy play.
Was quiet, Judy.
Oh,
Well,
this is so funny.
Yeah. So you guys all remember this. The
I remember it.
suit.
I remember seeing this video. Yeah.
Which, by the way, that is a fly suit. It's summertime. Of course you got to rock a tan suit. Like, what are you thinking? Who's wearing navy blue or black? Unless you're going to a funeral. Not me.
It's so silly.
Look, but this goes to show the ridiculousness that is this country that we live in. And before we got on, I was talking before we got live for all you guys, I said, I really hate it here sometimes. Like, I really, really do. Like, this is what the right machine is doing, right? They distract you with silly things like Tangate, right? Because he's not presidential. Meanwhile, you have someone in office right now who is doing everything that is opposite of presidential. Yet, no problems there. Folks, we got to see what's going on and don't let them pull the wool over your eyes, man. Like, this is the capitalist machine, the ruling class doing their thing, distracting you over here with silly stories while they literally steal money out of your pockets and continue to make this an awful place to live. Wake up, people. Stay woke.
So, Dr. Carl Sadler was on with us on Wednesday, and he mentioned how things in America were once unpopular, but they were the right thing to do. And then, of course, in time, we've all appreciated it. So that made me right away think of the Vietnam War, which my dad had friends that fought in it. And I was luckily born in '65, so I didn't have to do any fighting. But I followed it pretty closely. I looked this up. The Gallup News Service began asking the American public whether it was a mistake, this is quote, mistake to send troops to Vietnam in August of '65. So I was a few months old. At that time, less than a quarter of Americans polled, 24%, believed it was a mistake to send troops to Vietnam, while 60% of Americans polled believed the opposite. 3 years later, in September of '68, 54% of Americans polled believed it was a mistake to send troops. 37 believed it was not a mistake. So completely flip-flopped. My point is, while most of these things should be very obvious to those of us, even if they're not, we can't not fight for what is right, what is fair, and trust that eventually the country will move in the right direction as a majority. We already been voting for the right person in terms of the majority, not the Electoral College. We can't be afraid of what's popular now. There's a decency, there's a rightness to things. We should go after all of it and just hope people come along later, and we can't worry if they don't. The fact that 40% still supported Vietnam is nuts to me, but that's not the majority anymore, and that's fine with us.
Yeah, on that exact point. Actually, David, to your point, if you're going to do what the majority wants, you don't need a leader, right? You can just take a vote every time. It's fine.
Right.
But, the whole point of leader is the times when there's something the group wants that isn't going to be good for the group, right?
Right.
Okay, so also inspired by Carl Sadler, who was talking about specific policy is the outcome that matters here, right? Vague platitudes aren't what Carl Sadler is looking for. It's an infectious idea. To that end, the Milwaukee Bucks called Mandela Barnes, Lieutenant Governor of Wisconsin, from the locker room. Let's talk about him. This is from Wikipedia. Barnes authored numerous pieces of legislation during his time in state legislative office, including reforms to the parental choice program, juvenile justice reforms, a new grant program for community prosecutors, extending out-of-home care for youth in the foster system, early release reforms, ending the use of solitary confinement in prisons, expanding victim and witness advocacy services, establishing a community schools grant program, investigation of juvenile corrections programs and facilities, expanding eligibility for the earned income tax credit, providing tuition-free enrollment for technical college students, creating an Office of Civil Service, allowing 16 and 17-year-olds to pre-register to vote, decriminalization of marijuana, and comprehensive gun control legislation. That's the right guy to call. Like, yes, more of that. Like, this is, we're in good hands here. Like, I feel like this, more than painting things on courts, this is where we want to go. This is the conversation I'm interested in.
Well, I'm at exact line.
Yeah.
I was so proud to know that they didn't just sit in the locker room, the Bucks, and bitch and moan or whatever. They acted. I looked it up. There's a whole lot of young people in that locker room. I mean, compared to me, they're all really young. When I was in my 30s, I bought a house in my 30s. I was 31. I didn't think big picture. I wasn't smart enough. Yeah. The fact that these guys are doing that and get these people on the phone, and I think it's in what was that maybe Jarod posted, where they had gone to a prison, the Bucks did, with Barnes and the governor, I believe.
Yeah.
And played like pickup basketball in the prison. They had connected there, and they reference that's building a network, a pretty damn important network. And we've talked about it on this show, guys. I don't know that the NBA listened to a word we said, but they're doing what we've been talking about. Henry, you've been pounding this for a long time. You've got to get to the money, guys. They have the power, they have the influence, and these young cats did, and I bet they will continue to do so.
There's a little.
Go ahead. No, go.
I'm a little bummed, and we'll investigate more about this, but like the moment that they were discussing these issues when LeBron stormed out of the meeting, and now we don't have specifics. Now we are back to play. Like, bummer.
but I think they have some other. Yeah, I think those specifics will come out. From what I'm told, they have made some progress with some of these things, and I think we'll find out about them. I don't know what they are.
And symbolism are for sure important, right? Like, because that's how, again, moments start. But they can't stop at moments. Moments need to turn into movements, which need to become continuous civic action and engagement, right? Engagement suggests constant interaction, not a one-time motion. Look, again, if we're going to change the way things are, it's got to be about policy, as Carl said when we were on the emergency pod on Wednesday night, right? We got these things set up. Okay, now let's go talk to the lieutenant governor. Let's talk to the ADA. Let's talk to all these elected officials and say, no, we need this bill passed. I think Bilal or Devin put in the chat that the California legislature is now like sort of watering down the George Floyd bill. Like, yeah, because this is what happens, folks. We make a lot of noise and they say, okay, we'll put it on the floor. There is no follow-up and in civic engagement. And what happens is it just gets watered down in committee, and then, we forget about it. This is all by design, by the machine. This is what they do. They make government and the way in which you interact with it such a tedious process that they hope just by sheer, tiredness, you'll just give up, right? And you'll be like, all right, we're good. But we can't. Like, if we want this to be better, this is active engagement literally for the rest of our lives. That's how it gets better.
So Carl mentioned Derica Purnell, who's a human rights lawyer, writer, activist. Like the bio is super impressive.
Amazing.
Harvard, blah, blah, blah. She wrote something on the appeal, which has specific recommendations, which I will cite now. Call on the cities you represent to endorse the most, to defund the police. At least 18 have pledged to shift resources from police departments, so you could get each team could get their city to do that. Number one. Number two, Representatives Rashida Tlaib and Ayanna Pressley are championing the Breathe Act, legislation powered by the Movement for Black Lives to divest from state violence and to protect and invest resources in Black communities. That's another opportunity. Organizers in Chicago have succeeded in pushing a reparation ordinance that offers education, counseling, physical space, and money to victims of police violence in their communities. Asheville, North Carolina has approved home ownership and business program reparations for Black residents. That's a good idea. And then she notes this: if professional athletes choose to demand prosecutions, I hope they understand this demand is rarely met. And if it is, the cop, if convicted at all, faces little to no prison time. More perversely, the prosecution may not deter other cops from killing Black people. So all calls to put one person in prison does not make any other Black person more safe. The cops responsible should be fired and never allowed to work in public or private law enforcement again. Though this may feel dissatisfying, calling for this level of accountability undermines the idea that our only hope for justice is a tenuous conviction in the hands of the same systems responsible for our murders. It's why we must defund the police who killed Breonna Taylor, not merely arrest the officers who killed her and other Black people.
It is systems that we're talking about. And right. Judy, this is a great time to play the Joy Reid piece. But before we play it, I think most people here know Star Wars or somewhat like affiliated with the Star Wars universe. And a scene from Revenge of the Sith sticks out to me in my mind. And it's when Natalie Portman's character, Senator Amidala, is in the Galactic Senate meeting, right? And by the way, like, George Lucas is very heavy-handed in that movie about his politics, and it's very clear. Like, if you didn't, like, it's pretty obvious, right? One of the bad guys is named Newt Gunray, for crying out loud. Like, I mean, it was on the nose and literally right in your face. But anyway.
Wait, Jarod, can I be Harrison Ford in this scenario if we do a movie?
No, well, except he's not in Revenge of the Sith, but yes, you can be Harrison Ford and all those.
wrote himself out of the story.
It's all
Hey, if I can be in the next one, that's fine.
But she says, so this is how liberty dies. The sound of thunderous applause. This is what is happening. And if you play the Joy Reid clip from last night after the RNC, you'll get what I mean.
I knew you were going to.
Watching this, I'm thinking, you know, Fidel Castro, Julius Caesar, Mobutu Sese Seko. That was not an American president giving an acceptance speech. That was a monarch. It was very much like what Castro used to do, an hour and 10 minutes that clocked in of just, you know, it wasn't a usual Trump speech with his ad libs and sort of he did the sort of humor kind of thrown into it. He said, the fact is I'm here and they're not. He made the White House into the Trump palace. If democracy in America ever falls and we become a complete autocracy with a decrepit leader and his corrupt family moving their trunks into the White House and never leaving, if we become the old DRC, you know, or we become what Brazil is now, if we just fall as a democracy, tonight is what it will look like. This is what it will look like to have a decrepit, corrupt monarch. This was a crime. Every cabinet member that was sitting there was violating the Hatch Act. Ivanka Trump was violating the Hatch Act. This was repugnant to see a campaign sign festooned on our property on the White House with a big iron gate outside so that the people can't even come in. This was repugnant. This would be the end of America. If this is what we're going to be, this won't be a democracy. That's a monarchy. It was repugnant. Sorry.
I mean, I don't, and I did not watch the RNC. Obviously, Joy and everybody has to do that because that's their job. Because I can't really stomach that kind of. It's just, I can't do it. But her point is valid, right? The White House belongs to the people, right? We, the people. Our tax dollars, what we contribute to this society. This dude has effectively moved in, put up campaign signs out on the fence, locked gates out. This is, again, as I said before, if he is in fact voted out in November, do we all think he's just going to be like, okay, I'll see you guys later and move out in January? I don't. And so again, we need to be just very mindful of what is literally happening right in front of our eyes. We're being lied to repeatedly by our administration. They are continuing to steal from the very people of this nation. The poor and disenfranchised are being trampled on more than ever. And the propaganda is just literally, they're not even hiding. There is no hiding anything. They're doing it directly in front of our faces. And again, to my point before, it's not enough to point it out and laugh. Like, we have got to be engaged civically with our elected officials. Like, I was on the phone the other day talking to someone, like, you've got to be doing this and saying, okay, what bills and what pieces of legislation are, okay, I want to support X, here's why. What do I have to do? Who do I need to talk to? Like, it's these little moments within your community that then grow outward bigger that actually create and continue a sustained movement.
I want to add one thing. If you listen to that, did you hear the aria that was playing?
Yeah.
That was Nessun Dorma, I think, from Puccini's Turandot. Which is, if you want to marry the princess, you got to answer 3 riddles. And if you didn't get all 3 right, you were beheaded. And this man was singing because he was going to be able to marry the princess. He was basically, no one sleep tonight. Nessun Dorma. That's what I believe that aria was. Beheaded if you can't answer all 3 riddles. I don't even think that was an accident.
Probably not.
That's fucked up.
What the hell?
That's fucked up right there. That was my ringer for many, many years. Not that anyone spoke Italian, but I recognize it, I thought anyway. That's crazy.
Why did you choose it?
Because I don't speak Italian, so when I listen to opera, I do it because I don't know what they're saying. The music fills me. I want to say something too, based on something Jarod was saying earlier, guys, and that's regarding humanity. You're hearing a lot of people right now arguing that Jacob Blake, it's funny, I just saw what Caleb wrote.
Yeah, Caleb.
That he was reaching for his knife or that he has a record, and you're going to see lots of besmirching things. But to me, we are lesser a people. If we say, well, he was a college grad, and so then it's a tragedy. But if he isn't the world's most perfect human, which none of us are, and I've said this many times, had police decided to go through my frat house, I'd have a college record too, okay? If the whole point of our government should be to protect all people. We're not their judge and jury. Even if he did have a knife in his car, which I have no idea if he did, we don't really know. He hadn't committed a crime. He doesn't deserve 7 shots, or 1 for that matter. Let's be clear, not 1. If we can't protect those people who may be less than perfect, which is all of us, what are we doing? And so I quickly address anyone who argues with me that that guy had an arrest warrant or whatever. I don't know what the truth is. I know that all of them deserve justice, and that isn't justice.
And an arrest warrant does not mean you should be killed, right? Like that, like that's not what an arrest warrant equals. And just the sheer physics of it. If you've heard the phrase, don't bring a knife to a gunfight, right? And that exists for a reason. Okay, let's say he was going to retrieve a knife from his car. You're surrounded on perimeter by cops who are not on their weapons, guns drawn. What could he have possibly done to get a knife in time to stop anyone? Nothing. Literally nothing. So this idea and it's false equivalency, and what we don't need to do, to your point, Coach, is engage with these bad faith people because they don't actually care about whatever alleged crimes they may have committed, who we might have heard it. Like, they don't care about those things. What they're doing is justifying the genocide of Black people. That's their point.
So I think like us white Americans are like, oh, wow, this seems like a break from justice, from the normal calm enforcement of the rules, right? And I think Black America's like, where the fuck was that, right? Like, you know, like that's never been a thing, right? Like it looked like a thing, it just wasn't. And so, oh gosh, so where did I read this? Yesterday I read something where it's basically like, the trade-off was like very rich white Southerners had the disproportionate percentage of the money when America was formed, right? And encoding racism was the trade-off. It made poor white Southerners feel like they were on the winning side, right? So that they were in league with the people who were actually controlling everything. They're like, oh, that's us, right? So I think this is a little bit of the transaction. Like we do it in more subtle ways now, right? But the idea is basically, no, poor white, and that's not like poor white Americans. Like we convince them, the very rich who messaged this, convince them they're not the bottom rung by blowing on the embers of racism, right? And it was particularly organized in the last few years. For instance, we know this for a fact. There have been indictments by like the Russian troll farm in St. Petersburg, right? And this is where, you know, and if you look, I just was digging through for this story that we'll publish on TrueHoop later today. That's in a hell of a heavy lift. But you know, they would inflame every kind of identity, right? Russia wants to weaken America so that Russia can do what it wants without NATO interfering, right? Russia's tiny. Russia's economy is the size of Texas or Italy, right? And we're huge, and if we're all on the same page, we can stop them, we can boss them around everywhere. But if we're divided, then, you know, it's a problem. So the troll agency is pretty clever, right? And they inflamed, honestly, the number one target was Black Americans on Black issues, right? So they're inflaming like Black sense of injustice. They're basically trying to make a civil war here, right? During this same period, right? Like one of the top ways that they would inflame white sensitivities was by retweeting Breitbart, right? Steve Bannon is the figure here in radicalizing those cops who shot that guy, right? They've been particularly inflamed. So in this story we're gonna publish, like there's some meetings like with some NBA figures, and fucking Steve Bannon's in the fucking meeting, like the guy who has deep Russia ties going back like 2014. You know, like we've been working with this guy who we now from the Senate Intelligence Report know was a Russian agent, right? Like this is where I'm a little bit frustrated with the idea that NBA owners are going to be meaningful partners. Like when you have the NBA screen the messages on the jerseys, and now we've gone from the Bucks and the lieutenant governor of Wisconsin deciding what the legislation is that the players are going to like push for. Adam Silver says they're the best positioned in the world to push for real change, the NBA players. But now we're in a negotiated with the league message, right? I don't know if we want that. I don't know if those billionaires have earned the presence at that table, because they have cut deals with the worst people here, right? They've been in the rooms. Honestly, all you want to do is unwind what they did. Like that's step one. So I'm a little bit like, oh, like I don't, now it's behind the scenes, and what's coming out will be the league meeting with the players. Now the lieutenant governor of Wisconsin is a little bit left out of the loop, right? And I have a feeling it'll be watered down in important ways. Read TrueHoop later.
as most of these things are, right? And really, look, what we have to just be mindful of is really what's going on. And to your point, Henry, like, in people writing about it in the chat, like, these signals and these messages that are being sent out by the Republicans are very clear, right? When they say things like Democrats are going to let them come and burn down your suburbs, like, you know who the them is they're referring to, and you know who they're talking to when they say, your suburbs, right? And it's very clear. And we, as a nation, we need to resist and fight back against that. But that's why the Republicans are so much better at politics than Democrats are, right? The Republicans don't give a shit. They don't care if they're telling you truths or not, because they know people almost always respond off of emotion, right? Not off rationality and thinking. So if I tell you your home's going to get burglarized and robbed and taken away, not if you vote for me, it won't. Like, you know what all those signals do in the brain. Not if you, meanwhile, Democrats on Twitter are going, well, let's break down a step-by-step process of how we're going to defund police. No, like that message isn't going to work against that message. That's not, and honestly, if that's how they're going to play it, that's how we have to play it on this side, right? Like, you got to fight fire with fire in that way, right? If you're going to ultimately get what you want.
I mean, maybe, like, I'm a little bit, so like
we can't use ourselves as the test case, because we do our best to think rationally. Like, we're not the right people to use. We got to use the people who don't think rationally.
Right. So no, I'm totally, so like the prefrontal cortex, this is my reading. I could probably grab another book here. Here we go. Super recommend this book, you guys. Has anybody read this book? Unbelievable book. I learned it just as a little warm up, clearing his throat. This genius guy wrote this book about PTSD. Really, like, explains how the brain works in a way that really sticks with me. Where there's like the 4 sections, and I won't name them because I'm too stupid. The top one is the prefrontal cortex, which I'm going to summarize is where reason is. So the good legislation, the good plan, the thing that Carl would tell us yesterday wouldn't be popular at the moment proposed, but would ultimately work better. That's going to come here, but you can't access that. It doesn't work. The electrons don't fire if any section below it is activated. They hijack the process. So down here is like breathing and going to the bathroom, right? And then we work up, right? And somewhere in here is the limbic system, which is where you feel fear. The amygdala, like, this is where, like, Donald Trump is a freaking genius, right? Like be scared every day. It's actually really almost too easy in a pandemic to make people scared. But so as long as you're scared, you're not going to come up with good legislation, right? That said, they're big, it pisses me off that they call this populism. Like, they didn't even win the popular vote. Like, it's not ridiculous. That popular, right? Like, exactly right. Like, in fact, right now it's polling very badly. Like, so this unpopular populism is actually not working right now. Like, the behind the scenes string pulling and rigging vote machines and the mail stuff, that might work, but they're not actually, they're lighting up enough people to fill that lawn and to cancel some rallies in a lot of cities because they're poorly attended, right? Like, it worked very well in 2016. It's not very popular right now. We'll see what they can get, but really it's a trick, like that thing we were talking about with the powerful people, the Southern whites. It's a trick to get poor people to fall for what rich people want, right? But I don't think people are falling for it very much right now.
I hope not.
I'm just a coach, right? So I think of things, how do you win a game strategically? If you watch Denver play, for example, poor Michael Porter Jr. cannot not be involved in a ball screen. You just can't defend anyone with another person coming. We know through the Senate Intelligence Committee report, I wish that something was talked about years ago when they first were investigated. Our media failed us here. I've always wondered, we talked about collusion. How were they colluding? I've always speculated that they were telling the Russian agents and the bots where to target the purple states. And now the Senate Intelligence Committee confirmed that's exactly what they did. Manafort was giving the internal polling data to the Russians.
I can confirm David Thorpe called this in real time.
That's strategic.
Yeah.
We need to be strategic, Jarod. I am not discounting what you're saying. I feel almost everything you're feeling. You're allowed to have your own thoughts different than mine, but we need to be smart and we need to be strategic, and we need to get our best brains to think about where are their Michael Porter Juniors, and let's relentlessly attack them. And nothing against MPJ. Relentlessly attack
screens every time.
Exactly. Bring them in screen after screen after screen and beat them to a pulp. And through the Electoral College right now, the law of the land. And then once we take over all the House, the Senate, and the presidency, fuck the Electoral College. But for right now, it's the law of the land, and we have to use it to our advantage and win strategically.
Well, with that being said, there are all these races that are happening all over the Senate races, right? And I don't know if you guys saw this, but Nancy Pelosi had said to the Democratic Party that you cannot, the current membership cannot go against an incumbent Democrat. You cannot stump for another candidate who's going after an incumbent. Except she broke her own rule, because in Massachusetts, right, there is a Senate race going on, and the incumbent is in fact a Democrat, and she is stumping for his would-be rival, which is a Kennedy, right? Because Nancy Pelosi wants to support a Kennedy for her own political imaginations and reasonings and whatever. And what we need is, and so AOC said, well, I thought you said we couldn't do this. Well, I'm coming out now in support of the incumbent, because this is a guy who's progressive, and that's the other thing that we have to do, right? Like, we have a party, and first of all, two-party system is a whole other issue that we don't have time to get into today. But as a Democratic Party, we need to have the leadership within that party start changing, right? Like Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, all these corporatists, like ruling class, shouts to the capitalist machine. That's who they love, right? They love capitalism, and that's their jam. We need AOC, Jamal Bowen, Rashida Tlaib, all these people, and Ilhan Omar, as they start to rise with power, that they then shift the message of the Democratic Party and make it a true party of the people. Hoping, of course, that as they continue to mature in their political career, they too don't get corrupted by money, and right? Because that's just what happens, right?
Very good point. Yeah.
That's our challenge.
I mean, we have this super crazy system where you needed, like they were shocked, I think, when it was like, I remember when it was like $70 million presidential candidate raised. And now it's like, I think that Donald Trump had a month where he raised almost that in a month, right? And this is because of Citizens United.
Right.
So long as the system is, that kind of money, like there's no generational change that's gonna, like, you know what I mean? Like well, don't get me started. There's a lot of media theory here, but like, it's super crazy. Like that money's going to buy TV time.
It drives me crazy too.
Just give them TV time.
Yeah.
Right?
Just give it to them.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You won't get the TV companies. My brother-in-law works for Howard Scripps. He's an IT director for the local station here, and he travels the country helping them. And I know how much money they're making on elections.
You won't get them, but I mean, would you rather have democracy?
No, I'm on your side.
Who cares?
It's what keeps them in business.
No, I get it. Yeah.
No, Henry, I don't want capitalism.
Right.
Yeah.
Start a different business. But what are we doing? We are empowering people to control our election just so these TV companies can stay in business?
Like a Russian banker close to Putin goes to the NRA and offers them a ton of money.
Right.
And then the NRA becomes Trump's biggest donor. I think that's like $30-something million to buy TV time. Right? Like, and now, like, you think they just did that for fun?
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? That was just like being nice. Like, come on.
I want to say to Jarod, dude, we need your energy, but we also need some degree of optimism from you. I can't have you sighing. You can sigh, and then fucking suit up. We need you to suit up.
You're like a coach. You know exactly what to say to me. All right, fine. I'm getting my uniform on. Let's go.
Yes.
I'll play 48 tonight. Let's do it.
Yes, we need you. We need you, my man. We need you, right? We can't win. Let's put it this way. We cannot win without you.
See?
That's for
this
sure.
This is why Coach Thorpe is so good. He knows what kind of an athlete I am and how to get the message to me, right? That's how you get me to go, right? You said, listen, I understand, but we need you. See, now I'm all in. You come out and you berate me, forget it. I'm out. I'm going home.
Henry knows, I always say, life is a slog, man. This is what it is. I tell my kids that all the time when they were little, even. It's a slog. It's a grind, whatever. Like, suit up. Like, there's no other option. We got to suit up. And right now, the fight's worth it. There are times where we didn't need you so much, or me or Henry for that matter, or Judy. Now is not that time. Like, this is, my wife feels your pain, Jarod. Her and her sister were plotting our exile last night. Like, where are we going? And I sent her a long note early this morning. Huh?
Jarod's drinking.
Right. I sent my wife a note. Actually, it was late last night about, stick with me, sweetie. We're not just running away yet, right? She's not going to leave me either way, but I'm invited wherever they decide to exile. But I want to exile around my family and my kids right now. So we got to suit up here and fight the good fight. And we can't do it without optimism. Like, you don't win that fight unless you know it can be better. And to your point, regarding all the things that have gone on terribly in this country, we have also made progress. Nowhere close to the progress we want. And I guess there's a book coming out called Haste. I haven't seen it yet, but I've read that it basically makes us out to be as bad as the Nazis. And I get it. I'm not even arguing that point. I can't wait to read the book. But we have made some changes, and we won't make any more if we don't have some optimism. We need optimism.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that, Coach. Isabel Wilkerson has a book out now called Caste, and it's just about America's racial caste system.
That's the book. Caste, not hate. It's the same book.
One letter different.
My eyes are bad. I saw the cover and I couldn't really see it. I thought it said, okay, got it.
That's why I'm here to help you.
That's
the
it.
interesting thing about that, Isabel makes a point, and she's a Pulitzer winning journalist, Times and all that. She says that when Nazi Germany was figuring out how to make their rules, they came to study America and our racial system. And they said, wait, you guys are a little bit too harsh over here. Like, that's how insane this is. The Nazis thought America was too harsh. Like, what? Where are we? Like, what's going on? This is the world we live in, folks. But you are right. The optimism is key, because if we don't believe we can win the fight, as you said, well then let's just go home now. Then let's just end it all now.
Well, I don't want to be all like, oh, I'm so well traveled, but like, I have lived in England, India, Ecuador, and I've traveled all around those places. Like, we're way ahead on race, way ahead, like 100 years ahead. Like, so this is the problem is, and you know, it's just, you got to go somewhere, as Carl was saying, right? And for me, I was not born here. I was born in England. I was an English citizen until George W. Bush was in the White House, and they started deporting people for shoplifting. And my little joke is, I love shoplifting, so I had to become a citizen. But really, what's true is we were having kids, and I was like, I cannot be separated from my children by some stupid thing, right? I could get in some argument or something. It happened. So I became a U.S. citizen then. But and at that time, I had the option to keep my British passport. They actually gave it back to me, which I didn't think was coming. And then I had this moment of like, and then, we've gone to the airport a bunch of times, and I could go in the short line while my family has to wait in the long line, right? We're going to visit my family in England or whatever. But my thing is, I'm in. Like if this shit's broken, it's my shit that's broken, right? Like, I'm gonna stay here. This is where my family lives, and I don't want my second citizenship. I've never activated it, and I won't. I just feel like it's a little weird to be 1 foot in, 1 foot out anywhere, right? In the analogy, we're in like we're on an island or whatever. Like, no, we're gonna have to solve these problems. Like, I don't know what it's gonna take. It's gonna be a crazy slog, to use David's word. But I feel like it doesn't help if everyone else in the fight with you thinks you're about to leave, right? Like, I'm not leaving. And I kind of believe that really this whole thing is where we're breaking down is trust, right? We can't point to enough, right? We don't have enough. We haven't built enough, but we don't have none, right? Like, we're weaving this little tapestry that's going to catch us all, right? Like, there's a connection. I have a connection to you, Jarod, and you, David, and you, Judy. And like, those are a couple of threads. Like, as I walk out the door, like, I don't actually encounter virulent racists, on my block. Like I do actually at times I see a bumper sticker or something that freaks me out, but mostly I'm like, okay, we're building some threads, right? Like there's good news if you look for it too, right? And if we can blow on that, make those embers grow a little bit, then, you know, it can get better in a hurry.
And then also recognize that what that world that we're building that's going to be just and equitable is one that we likely will not be able to experience, and being okay with that, right? And like being like, no, that's actually good. It's a good thing we're doing for future, right? And
Long game.
It's a long game, right? And that's hard for a lot of people to wrap their brains around.
Yeah,
So,
no, the long game is hard. And we really fast start. Like, I think there's a way it could be a lot faster, which is, I think your gardening analogy is amazing, and you know I love gardening analogies. And I spend a lot of time in the garden, including this morning. But Mother Nature heals itself really fast, right? Actually, like everywhere something terrible happens, stuff grows there like the next day, right? It happens fast. Like I climbed Mount St. Helens after it erupted, and it was just all ash. And then like just a year later, it's like green, you know, it's crazy. Mother Nature will heal itself if you stop poisoning it.
Right.
And I think this is the thing, like this isn't so much a sick patient because it's like, you know, just worn down. It's sick because it's being poisoned, right? Like Donald Trump is poisoning it. like that's what's happening. If you stop poisoning it, I think it, like, I don't want to make any promises, but like, it could be surprising how quickly the patient improves.
Stop poisoning.
Yeah.
Henry and I were talking, Henry and I have talked about what we had a long time ago with TrueHoop and ESPN. We really had a family. And Jade, when he built Troop TV, he really created characters that were like a sitcom you watched and you loved them, whatever. And our impromptu show on Wednesday, I said to Henry afterwards, like, we got a family here.
Yeah.
And I'm connecting with them on Twitter and texting, whatever, or everyone that's been on our show is almost like they're part of our family. And it occurs to me that much of Trump Nation, they don't have a family, and that is their family. And they in a sense, it's a gang, right? And it's about as corrupt as one. And so the only way we're going to get them is to not be them, is to be decent and have empathy and listen. And you're not going to get a gigantic transformation, but you're going to get some. And that is how you build a snowball, right? That's how you build momentum. You start small, and we do it by not, I say this all the time, I have integrity, and it's not negotiable. There's certain things that I stand for that are not negotiable. I can adjust all the time. I'm super pragmatic, but not on some things. I'm going to be a decent person no matter what you do to me. I'm sure there's some line. We're nowhere close to that line. And so the more we attract people like ourselves with love and decency and honesty and a search for meaning and truth, we're going to get more people thinking like us, listening to us, and recruiting and so forth. And that's how you grow. And that's how you engender change, because then you do have the majority.
Devin's in the family.
Devin's like, are we part of the family?
It's a good family. And we're not, and tell you what, I told this to Henry too, as more and more information comes out about things like the coronavirus, we've had so many really smart people on the show, to the point where Henry told me the other day on the phone, if you watch us on video, I guess sometimes I'm seen with my jaw wide open listening.
David goes, I love it. Sometimes he's like,
he doesn't realize I think I have some ear cords in my throat. But
Doc
I've
Rivers
learned
in
a
there.
lot. I've learned a lot, as we all have, from each other. And so we are more knowledgeable together. And that's always going to be a strength for us.
Do you guys want to see what it looks like when
Kumbaya
David
right now.
Oh, sorry.
No.
I was saying we're kumbayaing right now, Henry.
We are. Can I, like, actually, David, we have something to discuss as friends.
Geez.
I mentioned in passing that I've formed an alliance with the Wasps.
Yes.
Okay.
We are friends in name only right now.
Everything David has ever just said about decency defines him to a core. It's real whether the camera's on or not, unless you're a wasp. And we've talked about this before. He gets, well, go ahead. Talk about wasps, David. Show him.
Let's be fair. I don't like stinging wasps. I'm not talking about the human being wasp. That's a whole separate argument.
Yeah.
The insect wasp who have been trying to sting me and my kids for 20 years.
Yeah.
Henry knows I used to, in TrueHoop, I used to kill one, and I would leave it in my driveway where my kids would play as a reminder, like as a warning.
The other ones.
Yeah, I didn't invent this idea. People are doing this for a long time. Like, hey, other wasps, this is what happens, motherfuckers. You are near my kids. And they understood. Only a few very brave souls that soon were dead. And because they didn't populate, they stopped doing it. I haven't seen a wasp in my area in years, Henry. Years. I'm in the wrong business. I should be in the pest control business for wasps.
Oh, hell
Don't
yeah.
fuck with me
No.
anymore.
That's why you have to watch The Wire, because Buck does something similar to a mouse.
I'm
He's
going
like,
to watch it for sure. Yeah, now
got
that
the
my kids are
mouse.
gone, I'm going to watch it. Yeah.
I'm gonna leave it out there. Mess with the other mice. Don't come
That's
around
right.
here again.
Right.
So I'm appreciating your story, David, because this gets you in your war mentality, right? This
Okay.
is your
Yeah.
this is your ferocious
up.
place in your brain,
Yeah,
right?
suit up.
For me, we have like this. We have a willow tree that we planted as a family. I don't know, 12 years ago, 10 years ago, and then there was a hurricane, and the biggest tree that we've ever had fell on the baby willow. And then, we'd take chainsaws and cut the big tree away. And then the baby willow was like all bent over. So for maybe 2 years, we had a rope across our whole backyard, pulling the willow tree back up, like straightening it back out. And everybody comes like, that's never going to work. It did work. Now we have a huge willow tree,
Wow.
and it's being infested by my nemesis. I have total obsessive behavior over this. The spotted lanternfly.
Really?
Is one night, like my son and I are walking in the backyard, and he's like, "Oh, look, there's one of those dead spotted lanternflies." We'd seen a couple around, and then I'm like, then we look up, I'm like, "Oh!" And the trunk of our beloved willow was 1,000 of them.
Jeez.
From that moment until now, if I have 5 free minutes,
Yeah.
I have developed a whole military enterprise of like the different ways. I've learned their habits. I know their thoughts. And I have personally, very often with my flip-flop, killed, I'm not even kidding, probably 300 of them. And I have occasionally had allies in this. My wife has been there. My son has been there. But David, this is where the story comes back to you. I've killed so many that their dead bodies litter around the trunk of the tree. And who comes? Who comes here? So many that there's actually now a wasp colony living in the ground, just eating the carcasses of the lanternflies that I kill. That's not that impressive to me. Although I will point out that they don't touch me. They're fine. We're allies. They are eating.
You're feeding them. Of course you're allies.
So the national disgrace of this lanternfly, which is in the news and it's destroying crops, blah, blah, blah. The problem is there's no predators for the lanternfly. Not here, right? Not yet. But there is. Like, I've personally witnessed live lanternflies crawling up the tree with the wasp getting in there and fighting it and hanging on it and stinging it. And the lanternfly's like, ah. And that's when I thought to myself, the situations get weird.
How
and
about
sometimes
that?
your friend is a wasp.
Are they stinging wasps?
Oh, the meanest. Yeah, they're like.
Because some wasps don't sting. Like my son got stung.
Yellow jackets,
recently.
I think.
My son got stung. He was doing some yard work, whatever, which he almost never done. He came in. He was very casual. Like, yeah, I got stung. I said, I'm sure it wasn't a wasp because I know they don't live here anymore. It was some other bug.
I love it.
Wasp and those lanternflies, they might have started in Florida, but they said it's too fucking hot here. We're going north. Like you got to be a hell of a bug to live here.
Yeah.
I've never heard of the lanternfly.
It's a regional thing. It started like Berks County, Pennsylvania. Somehow got like you can look at this map and it just goes out and out. And this is our summer. We have them everywhere.
And they eat it from the inside.
They eat the sap.
And yeah, that makes sense.
And I don't know if lots of crops die because of it.
The wasps of David's hopes and dreams.
All right, very quickly. We have NBA ball. We think this weekend. I've been saying Saturday, Sunday, but they haven't announced it to my knowledge.
Not yet.
But I think it's going to be Saturday, Sunday. I think
teams are practicing today, so
right. Whoever was supposed to play Wednesday will play Saturday. The team that was supposed to play Thursday will play Sunday. That's what I've been told, basically. And then you got Celtics Raptors. Like there's some good. The Clippers thing is KP may be back because the Clippers may have screwed themselves.
Got extra rest.
The Clippers may have screwed. If KP comes back and there's a game 7, they're going to think, oh man, what are we doing? We should have waited for the first one to be over before he protested.
I do think that them winning game 5 though was huge. I think they figured some stuff out. I think they're like, all right, they
did at the end of game 4. They figured some stuff out. We wrote about it. Henry, we'd be wrong to not say a modified eulogy for Damian Lillard. I will never forget those seeding games for Portland. It was a joy to watch Damian play, especially knowing when he first said, like, I ain't playing unless we're fucking playing, right? Like if we're going to go there just to say we went, no. Like we're going there to do something. Well, they did. They really captured my imagination anyway. And too bad Damien's he's a human being, so he's a little hurt. But I'll never forget it.
Here's my thing. Here's my proposal. Any NBA billionaire is free to donate to Donald Trump, but if they do, they have to spend like an hour face to face explaining it to Damian Lillard.
I like it.
Will you guys watch games this week?
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. I'm not quite ready. Actually, here's my other thought. Some team, whatever's happening behind the scenes right now, people are mad at each other. A lot of bubble, people talking. There'll be some heroes, some villains. Some teams will come closer together out of all that, right? This stress will bring some teams closer together, others not. Maybe not the Clippers, right? Let's see what happens. But if from this point forward the Bucks just roll, like that would be kind of wow, right? That would be
good one, Henry.
That would be kind of amazing.
It's a really great point. The 4 months they lost in gelling may have been made up for something like this. Yeah, it's they got to make threes and everything else, but I don't think you're wrong at all. I do think that it's culture. That goes to culture, right? The Celtics have really been, and Toronto, too bad they're playing each other.
Yeah.
Those are the two of the best culture teams we have right now. Those teams play for each other. They've grown. I mean, we all know Pascal Siakam's growth as a player. Jason Tatum. I was saying Brandon Ingram equally as good. I'm wrong. Like Tatum has taken another step beyond where Siakam is now. He also, if you put Brandon Ingram on the Celtics, I'm not so sure we don't see the same kind of growth. But Tatum is a spectacular player, and Jaylen Brown. Like, Jalen's one of the ones who said, "What are y'all going to do if we leave?"
Yeah.
Because I know what I'm doing. He was saying, like, I'm going to go work. So y'all going to go work and you go home to your families.
Jalen's the one to listen to.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
He's just 23.
Yeah.
Young guy. I love Jalen.
Oh my goodness,
great.
It's really impressive. Be 23 and think that big. It's not a surprise he went to Cal Berkeley.
Coach, you know who doesn't have good culture? 76ers.
Yeah, I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, obviously they're not playing, but in terms of who they're hiring, Hollinger's piece was a must-read, really.
Yeah.
Like, they have fucked everything up. And only the process of getting Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid allowed them to be where they are, which is in the playoffs, because they have screwed everything up.
But I mean, essentially as good as Indiana right now, right? I mean, that's who they are. But you have two guys under 25 who have the talent to be all NBA on both sides of the ball.
On both sides, right?
And they are as good as Indiana. That's a problem.
We should quickly talk about Nate McMillan. We have a minute and a half or so. I've never been a fan of his. I'm a fan now, and I'm a big believer. And Henry knows I feel this very strongly, that if you can build a team that makes the playoffs every year, wins about 50 games, puts a good product on the court, your fans should be happy for a generation. Like, if you don't win a championship, but you're in the running, luck might happen. Like Dallas did the one year, you might win a whole thing, but you've got something. And Nate had that in Indiana. Now, I agree with Masai getting rid of Dwayne Casey, who I like very much, because they had a team he thought could win a championship, and he just couldn't coach his way out of those postseason games. And for whatever reason, Masai thought I could win a championship with Nurse. He was right. Nick Nurse might be there as long as Pop was in San Antonio. But I think Indiana, I don't know who they're going to hire. They were going to win the same way they've been winning for a long time, and they still had young talent. Like, there was a future there. Now I don't know what they're going to do.
Nate's going to get a job too,
for sure. Oh, yeah. I was going to say that next, Henry. I'm glad you did. Like, there's plenty of teams like Philadelphia that are broken.
Yeah.
This guy will build you a quality team.
Yeah.
He's proven that now. He has changed. He's not the most imaginative guy, but he's teaching something right. He's building something right. And there are teams that, like the Kings, for example, that would be very well served to have him. Yeah. They would have an identity. They would have an identity.
They extended him 2 weeks ago, then fired him. I'm like, then why bother going to the charade at the extent? Like, don't even bother. Like, just
point. No one understands why.
Oh, there's like these coaching agents are very sophisticated. There was a reason they had to do. I don't know the story at all, but like it wasn't just because they were like, oh, let's give it. That's not how these coaching deals happen at all. Things.
Right.
Anyway, yeah.
Cool. Enjoy the games.
Out the Madam Secretary.
Yeah. All right, we'll have a healing, calm, sort of optimistic weekend.
Yes, basketball will get me amped up again and optimistic.
Okay. Do our best to enjoy the game.
We need you. All right, thank you, everybody. Have a good weekend.